Welcome back to the Stay Spicy podcast. This season is all about leadership. And you might remember, if you listened to episode 1, we talked about a leadership myth being that leaders have a specific style, or that a specific style makes a good leader. I think Sherry called that bullshit. She called a lot of things bullshit in the first episode, actually. But no, that's not actually true. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert, an extrovert, if you're analytical, if you are an ideas person. Everyone and anyone can be a good leader. And in fact, your style is not the one that matters most. It's more about what are the styles of the people around you, and can you work with different styles? And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Sherry, do you want to introduce the topic and our guest for today?
Yes, and we are at it again, taking assessments and not knowing what the diagnosis is and revealing it on the podcast. So this is our second time doing this, Lynette. We did the Johari exercise in the last season. So today we're doing the DISC assessment. So Lynette and I both took the DISC assessment, and this is about determining your leadership style. So we did talk about values. This is an episode on styles. And in sticking with the Stay Spicy tradition, we have a guest who's going to run through it with us today and give us the results. I want to welcome Anoushka Fernandes, and she works with leaders and organizations in cultivating strong workplaces and cultures. Welcome, Anoushka, to the Stay Spicy podcast.
Thank you very much.
So we're really excited to have you here.
Nervous.
Yes, and nervous.
I can't believe after season 1 we decided to do this to ourselves again.
I know.
Where we take tests of some kind and we give the results to someone before seeing them. But yeah, I kind of love it.
This is super duper official. And Anoushka, I've worked with you in the past. I've loved working with you. So before we get into what DISC is and all of that, can you talk to us a little bit about your experience and work with leaders and cultures?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for the opportunity to be here. I've been in the professional workforce for over 25 years now, and I've worked in the nonprofit, the public, and the private sectors. And when I think back on the most enjoyable experiences I've had in the workplace, the one thing that always ties them together is I was working for or reporting directly to someone who really got it and cared about me as a person, cared about what it was that I wanted to do, cared about my continuous development. Those experiences that were not enjoyable for me are almost always tied together by working for a person who did not see team, did not believe in cultivating personal relationships with the people working with them. And so in my own leadership experience, I've really tried to emulate the good qualities of leadership in terms of transparent decision-making, being very regular with communication, and really trying to learn the people that I'm working with from a personal side of things, not just what they bring to the table in terms of professional competencies. So this is the everything DISC model that we're going to be talking about today. And what I like about it so much is the fact that it allows people a chance to have better self-awareness. And I think self-awareness really is the key to better leadership. If you know how you're coming across to other people, whether it's your peers, your superiors, or the team that you're in charge of, you're going to have more motivation to think about how you can best behave in a way that makes it easier for them to respond to. And as Lynette said in her introduction, that really means that anybody with any different style can be a good leader. What is important is investing the time and understanding what your preferences are, what the preferences of your team are, and then figuring out how to work on those things together so that everybody does their best work and has the best time possible in doing it.
We talked, I think in episode 1, we talked about, these profiles, these styles, not wearing them as like a badge or putting them up almost like a barrier saying like, this is how I am, you work around it, or using it as labels. And Anoushka, you have said something about how DISC should be viewed. I loved the line. I don't know if you remember about
yes,
not being a diagnosis.
It is a tool for dialogue, not diagnosis. So I know that Sherry said that in her opening comments. One of the things that I really like about the everything DISC model is that it's very plain language. All of the explanations are written in very non-judgmental language because there is no wrong way to be. All of us bring different things to the table. And so a leader can be anyone, a good teammate can be anyone who exhibits any of these different styles. So we do say it's a tool to learn, to get better at understanding yourself and others. And it's certainly not ever, to your point, Lynette, meant to be an excuse for bad behavior. There are positive ways and negative ways that all of these styles can manifest. So we want to really maximize the positive. What we say is that it's not meant to change who you are or encourage you to change who you are, but it is intended to give you the tools and the awareness to be able to better adapt your style so that you can work better with people that are different, or in teams where potentially everyone exhibits the same type of style or tendencies, make you more aware of what the potential blind spots might be in not having those other styles represented. That always makes for better decision making in terms of being more aware of any risks your team or your organization might face. And can also be a really good catalyst for encouraging you to go out and look for more diverse voices to increase the inclusivity of how your organization or your team is operating.
I have some experience with DISC as well, and I entered a team that was really struggling culturally. And I decided that one of the things we could do to try to facilitate a conversation would be for everybody to take the DISC, and then we could have a conversation about all the styles, how we work together, but also like see us all plotted out. And what was fascinating that came through for me in that was that everyone was clustered into the same two quadrants, except for two people in the organization.
Well, there's your answer.
Yeah, it was like, wow. It was exactly. The other thing I find with DISC is sometimes with the titles of the styles, sometimes people can have a hard time with that, where they go, oh, and they attribute certain, negative characteristics to that. So at the outset, I'll echo something that Jane said in season 1 about the Johari window exercise, is that these are not good or bad, as you said. And so the key is not to judge yourself. This is all information for how better to work, to support yourself, to support others. So Anoushka, as a lead-in then, for people who might not be familiar with the DISC model, can you walk us through just a kind of high-level overview of the different styles and maybe some of their characteristics?
Sure. So the everything DISC model is represented as a circle with 4 quadrants. So if you are to start, we'll do it in the order of the letters in which the model is made. D is the first, so that's, I guess, the northwest quadrant. That style is called dominance. And so I know, to Lynette's point, there are always, immediate judgments that we make based on how we use the language, but I guess they had to put a label on something. And so some of the characteristics of this style are high levels of self-confidence, quick ability to make decisions, sometimes forcefulness, and sometimes a very high risk tolerance. So that's kind of the first quadrant, D. The second quadrant, so I guess that would be the northeast, is called influence. And these tend to be the real people, I guess you could say. Right. So highly characterized by charm, enthusiasm, optimism, always wanting to be in a social type of environment rather, given the choice, will probably prefer to be with people rather than independent. S is the southeast quadrant, and that is labeled as steadiness. So people in this quadrant are often motivated by stability, not a lot of change, but very focused on collaboration and opportunities to help others. Really also motivated by displays of sincere appreciation. So again, speaking to that team aspect of things. And then the fourth quadrant, which would be the southwest west is called conscientiousness, and probably one of the most difficult words to say given some of the characteristics that are in the quadrant, which is kind of funny. So people that are very focused on accuracy, stability, often challenging assumptions, so tend to maybe be a bit more skeptical than people on the right-hand side of the quadrant, as we say. So that's a very quick overview. As we get into talking about maybe the results that the two of you have, we can get into these. One of the things that's very important to note about the everything disc style as well is that where the results will generally plot people in a particular quadrant, everyone is a blend of all four styles. And so we're all going to display attributes of all four. It's just the strength level that those come through in. So again, tool for dialogue, not diagnosis. A lot of components, we all contain multitudes, I think, right, is one of the sayings. So just really important to appreciate that where we may have a tendency to display something, it doesn't mean that we don't possess any of the characteristics that are found in the other quadrants.
And so now that you've revealed the styles, I have to say that workplace I was talking about, everybody was clustered in the D and the I quadrants.
Right.
There was only one person in S and one person in C. And I felt so bad for the person in S who was all about like, let's all get along and and everybody else was just like, hi.
Let's just get her done.
Yeah, get it done. I only care about being out there and
Stop crying.
Yeah, the very like fast pace and it's, stop with your feelings.
Exactly.
So it's, we'll talk a little later about the importance of diversity, but that was really informative once you know the styles. It's like, whoa, we have a problem.
Well, and we know a lot of companies that, in a lot of workplaces that are hiring, we're an agency. We have this personality. We want this type of person. It's fast paced. And even when you apply for jobs, like everything is just so prescriptive. And it's like, do you want the same person working at the place? So you have the same people working at a place and that lack of self-awareness that we talk about at leadership levels. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Well, leaders also tend to gravitate towards their similar styles,
For sure.
right? And that's in terms of a self-awareness
In fairness, yeah,
thing.
we all do. Yeah. Absolutely.
But it's good to be aware of that. And I, as a leader, started to learn over time about, the styles that I had the hardest time maybe working with were the most important for me to hire because they were complementary to my strengths. Like they had strengths I didn't have. And so that's another aspect I think as we go through is being aware of your style, but that you need a opposite and a variety of styles around you to kind of make a complete team.
Yeah, I know that as we've been increasingly talking about diversity in the workplace, quite often we fall back on the very obvious visual cues of age, race, gender. Yeah. I think sometimes what gets lost in the shuffle is thinking about those invisible qualities of diversity as well, which can include learning styles, right? Or communication preferences. So that also is very important to consider when you're looking to make a holistic team that's truly going to be representative of all the needs that you need to serve in whatever capacity that is.
Exactly.
So this is the moment.
The moment of truth.
So Anoushka's going to walk us through the DISC assessments. We're going to do both of ours, right? And we're going to kind of figure out how we're similar, how we're different, our comparisons. So
the big reveal.
Well, based on what you know of my very brief overview, I wanted to ask, do either of you have any guesses as to where you might fall in the circle?
I was thinking like the red dominant. What was the top?
So
I?
we've got,
Yeah, because I've done similar leadership assessments, but I haven't done them in years. So
more of an
I think it's
influence
different than the
person.
colors one that you did
Yeah.
Okay.
You're thinking influence or dominance?
Yeah, she's thinking influence. She said
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't know though. I'm keeping an open mind. What about you, Lynette?
Well, I've done it before a few
so you know.
times. So what my style was the last time I did this was I was right in the middle between D and I, which means basically I share those characteristics. And I was right at, like, I was a high at the top of it, which means they're very prominent. So I'm interested to see if I've changed.
Right.
Because a lot has changed in my life. If anything, I think maybe I would be a little more into the I quadrant now than I was before. That would be my prediction if there's any change. But I think I'm still pretty intense.
Well,
No, she's not at all.
I don't think I've become like a C or something. That would be like impossible.
So I know this is an audio medium, but I'm still going to just show you your dots. You were both quite right. So Lynette, you have moved a little bit more off to the influence quadrant. So you're now squarely an I. And Sherry, you are closer to that DI border. So your style is called ID, where your influence was definitely more prominent in the results, but you had a fairly high level of the dominance as well.
Wow.
I'm not surprised.
No, I'm not either, really.
Sherry's got some D like tendencies.
What also struck me about your results, and I believe there's a graphic you're going to be able to show your listeners for those that are watching the
And we will share
audio.
these on our website as well.
Yeah.
Like we'll share so that people can creep on our styles.
So one thing that I did also want to explain the significance of is if you think of the everything disc model as that circle with a point right in the middle, every person is going to display a different strength level of their tendencies. So we say that if you are closer to the middle, you've got a very slight inclination towards your style. If you're within the middle of the circle, we say that you're moderate. And if you're around the circumference, we say that that's quite strong. And both of you were right on the border.
Yeah, we're pretty extreme.
Your styles were quite strong. And the one thing that we do talk about is that there's, again, nothing inherently good or bad about this. But in terms of your own self-awareness, when you are trying to relate to styles that are different, be aware that what we call your travel time between quadrants gets a lot bigger. So it might take a lot more energy or a lot more effort for you to move to adapt to those different styles as, say, someone that expresses more of a slight inclination. So that in itself can be very helpful because I think, I'm an ID as well. So, and I'm actually quite close to the border as well. So I've been able to take that to be very conscious of how I need to prepare myself for those potential modes of travel that I need to make to get to people that I'm working with that might live in other quadrants.
It's funny because we were ironically talking before today's episode about being frustrated with certain types of behaviors, both Sherry and I. And I would attribute that to, it can be kind of generational, but I think it's a style thing as well. And us being farther to the edge of the circle, it can be more frustrating for us. And I certainly, that's when I first started working with DISC. That was one thing that this helped me with, is that it helped me better understand why I would get frustrated with certain people or certain behaviors, and then look at how that related to my style. And then from the perspective of their style, how could I adapt a little to better support what they needed? And then how could I also communicate what I needed, or maybe suggest some alternative ways for them to approach something to get kind of better results. So for me, because I'm in that I struggle with C's.
Right.
Still to this day, I do. But I learned that it was really important to have those people around me because I am an ideas
Accuracy is a
person.
huge priority for them,
Yes,
right? So if
yeah.
it's not for you, it's a good thing to have
And
them
I'm
on
not
your
an
team.
executor. I'm all ideas, and I needed the accuracy people in my life. Yeah.
I would die without the accuracy people
Yeah.
because I'm so focused on getting it done, making it happen. And if I don't have those people kind of fact checking and helping me out and making sure I have all the information and, stopping you sometimes too to say, hey, you haven't thought about X, Y, and Z. It's really important to sometimes have cautious people. I would say cautious. And I love the idea of travel time because it gives people grace, right? It's a nice way of putting it. You know what? You're going to have to, and I always question, is there something wrong with me? Like when I enter emotional conversations and I get kind of almost like when someone wants to chat about something that has to do with feelings at work, I almost get like almost like my shoulders were going up, and I was like, why am I like this?
I have what it takes? D nature.
It is my D nature. I'm like, what do I have about, like, is there something wrong with me? But as you talk about styles and the whole idea of traveling to where they are, I think that's like an important point of team building. And it is a massive, this right now is a massive self-awareness exercise for me.
And one thing I will say about the Everything Disc assessment is that I'll leave each of you with a copy of this, but it generates a very detailed report. These reports are 20 pages long, and it gives you a lot of data to go through in terms of what are typical things that motivate you, what are typical things that really stress you out. We did the Everything Disc workplace module, but the Everything Disc tool encompasses a wide range of other assessments that can help you with things like agility in your emotional quotient, how to turn conflict into a productive tool to get better decision making. For people that are in positions of management or leadership, there are separate tools there to really help you get at, okay, how do you motivate people to be their best selves and to get the best work out of them? So it's a really great stepping stone for a bunch of other data and analysis that, if you're willing to invest in, can be very, very impactful in terms of your own leadership journey.
And I'm fascinated as well by the change in my style. Like, it's not drastic, obviously. I didn't like flip quadrants, but just that shift. And I sensed or anticipated it because since I've gone on this sort of new career journey for myself, I feel so much more myself, and I'm and like fully authentic. Feel like I've stepped into myself again for the first time in a long time. And I think I was always probably more naturally that kind of high I personality, but circumstances in life and work environments and people in your life can also make you kind of change your style a little bit, which is why I would say it's really important to, just like we said with values, to do the style gut check every now and then to see if things have changed for you a little bit.
Yeah, we do find that Everything Disc has got a pretty high integrity rating, so that we don't find that people will change very much throughout the course of their life, because at the end of the day, for anyone who's a parent, and especially if you've got more than one child, I've got boy-girl twins, you kind of look at them, and I know in the case of my kids, it felt like their personalities were fully formed the day that I met them. And there are certain things that we're just hardwired to do. But to your point, Lynette, significant changes in life, whether that's, very impactful death or the breakup of a long-term relationship or anything else, changing of careers, definitely can adjust how we present ourselves. And I think as we get older, we tend to get a bit more confident in who we are as well. Yeah. So to your point, it's entirely possible that when we do these assessments early in our life, we're doing them with an eye to thinking of what the proper response is or what we're supposed to say. Whereas sometimes as we get a bit older, we tend to be a bit more honest about how we're assessing it, because as we learn in life, there is no good or bad way to inherently be. We all are. We just need to figure out how to use those qualities to get the most out of our teams and relationships.
So speaking of teams, Sherry and I are a team, a duo, dynamic duo, because we work together at Stay Spicy. And so in addition to just knowing about our styles, we're curious about how our styles may work together. And if Anoushka can point out maybe some potential challenges, blind spots, areas of conflict, even though our styles are pretty similar, Anoushka, so if you have two people who have fairly similar styles, can you still have challenges there? Or are you kind of destined to be really good at working together if you have similar styles?
Like we are.
I was going to say, are you just perfect? We're also both Geminis, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's really fascinating.
Yeah. And we have the same hair.
Anoushka's dealing with more twins.
Yeah. She's used to dealing with
escape
twins.
it.
Well, one thing that I do often say to teams so in your case, you're a team of two and you were quite similar. the first thing that I would probably ask you to think about, and you've already alluded to it a little bit, is what are the blind spots that you think you need to be aware of? Because if
Accuracy.
it's great when there's a lack of maybe potential for conflict because you think so similar, but then you do have to be extra conscious of, okay, are we lending ourselves to groupthink even as a duo? And are we maybe not thinking through all of the potential options because we just come to the same conclusion so quickly? So I know that you both talked about the accuracy, but as you go through these reports, it will give you a bit of a sense of, okay, what are the things you need to think about in working with other styles? And that might give you some clues as to the potential blind spots you need to pay more attention to as you go through in your work. What I also ran for you, and this is something that we do provide folks that go through the assessment process, is I've generated a comparison report for each of you working with the other. And what this does is it goes through all of the behaviors on which the assessment was based, and it gives you the 6 where you were the furthest apart. Your report was really interesting because you're really not that far apart on a lot of things.
I was gearing up for like a battle here.
Right? The spicy tea.
Yeah.
No, you're actually very, very close in many of the scales. The 2 that were the furthest apart were when it comes to the balance of, in a conversation, who's likely to be more tactful, who's likely to be more frank and direct.
What do you think, Sherry?
Well, one of us doesn't like to shut up.
Are you talking about me?
Wait, am I the one? Now I'm being not tactful. I don't know. Tell me.
So, Sherry, you scored quite high on the scale of being frank. And Lynette, with the median, you were just to the left of preferring to be tactful. So, as an example, as it says here, Sherry's tendencies will not hold back on thoughts or feelings, may come across as blunt or insensitive, tends to speak directly and get right to the point. Whereas,
Like telling me I can't shut up.
whereas
She's a better listener.
Lynette may tend to think more before speaking, may tend to find a diplomatic way to convey information, but may also come across as somewhat vague or indirect at times. So again, not meant to pigeonhole anyone or to put people in boxes, but it is a tool of self-awareness that helps you think about, okay, if we are gearing up to have a very difficult conversation, what are the things that I should keep in mind about how the other person may be perceiving my ideas? And don't need to change my ideas, but do I maybe need to think about the way I'm going to present them so that I'm not immediately getting someone's shoulders up and giving that idea more of a chance to be discussed without, too much difficulty.
Yeah, I'm the reason we're not getting any sponsors. Is that?
I will say that I do struggle when people are more on the kind of blunt side of things, but I'm also quite used to it now. So I've worked with and have lots of those people in my life, but I still I used to say it's like a shot between the eyes for me. I'm just like, oh, it stuns me for a second, and I need to get my balance again. And,
Right.
And I do tend to really think about, I'm direct, I would say, but I try to think about how I'm saying something and consider the person's feelings and all that crap that Sherry hates. So Sherry, be nicer to me.
Hey, I am learning that you can be direct without being too blunt.
Yeah. And Sherry's like, Lynette, get to the point.
I'm working on it.
The only other scale where you had a noticeable difference because you were so similar in everything else is in the continuum between being skeptical of new ideas and accepting of new ideas. So where do you think you fell in terms of that?
I think I'm accepting of new ideas because I'm at my core, I think an ideas person, as Sherry knows. Every other day I'm like, hey, how about this idea? So I'm always seeking them out. That's where I would think. But it depends. I mean, I like my ideas. I don't know, I don't know about other people's ideas.
Yeah, I'm an optimist, but I think for me it's too much blue skying and it'll put me to sleep. Too much.
So on this continuum, Lynette, you definitely tended far more towards the accepting style of the scale. And Sherry, you were just kind of to the left of the median, preferring skeptical. So some tendencies here is Lynette, you'll tend to validate other people's ideas whenever possible. You do expect things to go smoothly and may come across as too trusting at times. So maybe you're very open to the ideas and not wanting to, maybe look at the potential pitfalls. Sherry, some of your tendencies were noted as tending to be somewhat questioning of other ideas, tends to consider what could go wrong, and then conversely may come across as a bit too questioning at times. So again, nothing inherently good or bad about either of those, but now that you've got that self-awareness, you can think more about how in the presentation of new ideas to people with different styles you may be coming across.
I will say that Sherry's very encouraging of all of my ideas, and she rarely will put a stop to them. She sometimes will go, maybe we look at that next time. She's gentle about it. I think that's over time of us working together, you really know me. And I don't know, Sherry, is that a conscious thing that you do to not crush my spirit?
Well, and I think as communicators, people work in public relations, communications, politics, if you work in it for a while, you start to get a little bit more skeptical. And I'm trying to work on being more open-minded to those new ideas. Lynette will give you 30 ideas. So, at first I would just be overwhelmed by all these ideas, right? I'm like, there's so many damn ideas. What ones are we going to do?
Yeah.
But, I'd like to open up more to, here are all the things. Now break them down to what's actionable. I'm someone that likes to see things, very goal-oriented, likes to see things to the finish line, likes to see the results. Again, not too much blue skying for me. So I think that I like to work with people who bring those ideas, because that helps me kind of see more creative visions, more things, and gets me out of that style, out of that space of there's 4 or 5 ways I've seen it done. I know how this goes. I know what happens when things go wrong. ABC, and people like that about me. But it's also nice to let some of that creative energy flow in, especially since I became an entrepreneur, working on that more.
And I really value Sherry for that. We call her the get shit done person, right? Because the minute you put an idea on the table, she's like, okay, how are we going to do this? Let's get to it. Just get it done. And and I'm not that person, right? So I want to do it, but I'm just not that super action. I want to start it, but I care less about the how. And I'm really all about the blue skying. And so for me, I need space to do that. I do tell people, now that I know my style and I know that about myself, I do communicate that to people. And I will say also, I think by talking. So I just need a little bit of space to talk something through to conclusion. And I acknowledge, I know that might be frustrating, but just give me a moment and just kind of let me work my way around. And Sherry's told people that about me too. She has this little disclaimer or warning label she puts out there about working with me, which I think is hilarious. And she'll give you 90 ideas, and she's like, don't interrupt her or stop her. She's like, but for the love of God, don't write them all down. She'll come around in the end to something that's workable. And to your point, I'll be what do you think about how we do this?
And I think that's great, Lynette. Even what you were saying about being really upfront with people that this is my process, this is what I need to do, that in itself can be very helpful, because then expectations are set. And especially when you're the boss, right? People don't often know how to react to that. So when you're really upfront about it, gives them the space to say, okay, we're just going to go through this, or this is what she needs to do to process. That can be very, very helpful. I think the more self-aware we are and the more transparently we communicate that, it helps us to humanize ourselves to our teams too, right?
True.
When I left the Alberta Public Service, I was an executive director and my team was just over 200 people. And so you try to go out and build relationships, but at the end of the day, there's a certain number of people that are just going to see you as a title. And so there's a certain deference or respect that they give to that, and not feeling a great deal of permission to maybe interact with that. So the more I could be very explicit about, wanting to hear from other people and make sure that all styles were represented at my decision-making tables. That was a huge piece of success for me.
And being human, demonstrating to people that, and I don't like the term like weaknesses, but just demonstrating to people where you say, okay, I know that this might be challenging for you. This is a way that I show up. Let me know what I can do to support you better. Or saying like, this is something that I'm not great at, but you are. And so how do we bring these two things together? I think that's very human, and it's a level of vulnerability that that teams would value in a leader. And one thing I know that my style would generally frustrate D's and C's who care about getting things done and care about doing them right. On the flip side, I struggled a lot where C's would have a tendency to like kind of point out the potential pitfalls in an idea. And it would feel like it took the wind out of my sails.
Why can't you be more accepting?
Yeah, it was like, no. I hate being told no. So what I would ask, and not tell, but what I'd ask some of the sort of C personalities that worked with me is, can you approach it in a way of, let's point out a challenge, but then offer an alternative or a solution? And it will be so much easier for me to work with that than to just say, this is a reason we can't do it.
Yeah, and that breaks down the barrier. So this is what we're talking about. It's dialogue, right? These styles are dialogue. And to your point, Anoushka, having a team of 200 people, positional authority in styles doesn't really work, right? So, it's not a prescription for how everyone's supposed to fall in line with that style. And hopefully we can break that barrier so that people say, okay, my boss has a very specific style. This is how they like to do things. This is what gets them excited about the work. I want to get excited about the work too. I'm going to, we're all going to kind of accept each other's styles and go from there. And how do we open that dialogue? Because I grew up in the like when I started my career, it was like, learn your manager's style and work with their style. And I know as I got into management, that's just not the case. So how do we kind of break that cultural barrier and get people thinking about being more accepting of all the styles?
Well, I think it goes back to what I said earlier in terms of if we want to have teams or organizations that don't have natural blind spots in them, we need to think about what diversity of representation looks like from a wide variety of aspects, not just those obvious visible ones that we can easily identify. So tools like this can be very, very helpful to that. COVID was such an interesting watershed when it came to how we manage teams and how we manage workplaces, because it was this extreme set of circumstances forced upon all of us without any sort of warning. We all had to make these adjustments. And 4 years later, we've now got hybrid workplaces that seem to be the new normal, whereas before they were very hotly contested things. And now it's almost a default expectation. And so when we're working with people not in an immediate vicinity sense, we need to make more efforts to get to know who these folks are and to work with them on truly integrating into our teams. And so I think the space has really opened up for, if you're going to insist on doing things the old way, you're not going to have that much success because you just don't have a workforce that's willing to adhere to that anymore. So for all the bad things that came out of COVID and it being the lost years, I think there were some really positive things that it forced upon us as kind of an international leadership cohort to really start paying more attention to.
Well, and if you think about it too, we were doing things in a certain way because that's the way it had always been done. And it didn't necessarily mean it fit everybody's style of working or everybody's style of working together. Maybe for some people, the flexibility of being able to do a hybrid work environment, it fits their style better. So you're going to get more out of them. For some people, they do feel the need to be in the office because they need that human connection, that human interaction. Maybe they're more I's and S's. And so being cognizant of what's going to help somebody be their best self and that it's going to be different for everybody. And I am frustrated with this notion that I've been hearing where a lot of managers and leaders are forcing everybody into a certain dynamic or paradigm that isn't as flexible. And it seems to be based on what the leader's style is as opposed to what the team's style is. And we're going to talk in a future episode about systems that we blindly follow just because that is either what one person is comfortable with or because that's what was established and nobody bothered to think about it. And this is something I think that when you think about things from the perspective of the styles of your team, then you have to rethink your systems as well.
Absolutely. And I think, when I just think back on the past 10 years, the entry of millennial-aged people into the workplace has forced that on us because they're bringing such radically different expectations for what work is going to be and what they want out of leadership. Again, if you're not going to try and adjust to that, you're probably not going to have a lot of people working for you because they're just not going to come. So I think, there's a great market for, folks like me to be able to provide these assessments to people in terms of being able to help you get that better understanding and truly to help you make a better workplace and a more positive culture.
So that's a great segue to letting people know where to find you, Anoushka. If they do want to have you walk them through a DISC assessment or work with their team, is there a way that people can connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm on LinkedIn as Anoushka Fernandes, and I've also got my own company called Marcelino Marise Solutions. So you can find me online through my website there, and would love to work with any individuals or teams that have an interest in investing some time to get to learn themselves better and those of their teams so that, again, they can make a more positive work experience for everybody.
Awesome. And we will share Anoushka's information on our website and also tag her on our socials so you can find her through us as well at Stay Spicy Inc. So make sure you follow us so that you can see more great content and you can find the charts and all of that stuff and the details of Sherry's and my similarities and differences, although you won't get the color commentary that we had today, which was a lot of fun.
You can always do a DVD director's cut, I suppose, right?
Director's cut, yeah. Totally. We'll do some more. We'll after we get a deep dive, because we haven't seen our DISC profiles yet, we'll do a deep dive and then maybe we'll do some more commentary on social. I don't know about you, Sherry, but this was eye-opening for me, even though I've been working with the DISC model for years now. I learn something new every time.
Same. And, looking at it in relation to how we work together, we've never done it that way.
Yes.
So it was really eye-opening today. And, we've got some stuff we've got to work on, Lynette.
We got some issues to work out.
Yeah, we're going to work those out in a future episode, maybe.
Yeah.
But remember,
somebody facilitate a conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Remember, ladies and gents, if you don't have ideas, you don't have anything.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Anoushka, for all the work that you did and the preparation lead up to, and then today. We really appreciate you helping us walk through this and providing the DISC assessment to us. And
My pleasure. Thank you.
For everyone else, we encourage you to get your DISC assessment done because it is, I just can't say enough good things about it. And until next time, stay spicy.
Stay spicy. Thanks for listening to the Stay Spicy podcast.
We love hearing from our listeners and want you to be part of our community. So connect with us on social media at Stay Spicy Inc.
And visit us online at stayspicy.ca.